we need to talk about GLM 5.2. This is an open source model recently released that the founder of Vercel tweeted out and said he's genuinely impressed, almost shocked at how good GLM 5.2 is at coding. This changes things. And when the CEO of Vercel is saying this, it is worth listening to. And this has serious implications for the entire AI industry. If open source models are getting this good, what does that mean for OpenAI and Anthropic? What does that mean for the most powerful frontier models like Fable and GPT 5.6, which are released but not accessible right now? What does it mean for the cost of coding and using AI into the future? So there are a lot of questions, but before we get into all of that, I want to explain what GLM 5.2 is, how are the benchmarks compared to other coding models right now, or just agentic models in general, and how can you use GLM 5.2 right now for coding if you want to test it out. So the first thing that you need to know is that GLM 5.2 is the latest flagship model from Z.ai. Now, this is a Chinese AI lab. If you look at the benchmarks, we can see it's very close to 4.8, Opus 4.8. According to the benchmarks that they're publishing, it is better than GPT 5.5 at coding. And there's 3 benchmarks that they're giving us here. So we can see it's basically just below Opus and around the same quality of GPT 5.5 for coding on these benchmarks. Now, benchmarks are just one part of the equation of how strong a model is. So we can't necessarily rely just on benchmarks of how good a model is, but it is one thing that we can look at. These other benchmarks are an LLM performance evaluation. So there's a bunch of benchmarks here that they ran it against. And as we can see, this is basically Opus and 5.5 level quality, but for significantly lower cost because it's an open source model. It has a 1 million token context length, which is quite long. The one thing that it does not have is the ability to upload images. So it's just a text in, text out model. So that is one downside of the GLM 5.2 model. If we go to OpenRouter and we look at models, so first of all, what we can see under the Explore model tab, if we go to most popular and then we go to text, we can see that GLM 5.2 is right under Opus in terms of popularity, but cost is really what I want to show you here. So the input cost for Claude, Opus 4.8, is $5. Output is $25. For GLM, it's 95 cents, and the output is $3. So it's just an multiple order of magnitudes less expensive to use GLM 5.2 compared to Opus. And especially for companies that are paying API cost for coding and they're not on a subscription for Anthropic or OpenAI, this per token cost is an insane difference that is going to be really hard to ignore for companies that are paying that API cost. And if you're using agentic tools like Hermes or OpenClaw, if you're paying the token cost, then it's a massive difference to use GLM 5.2 versus Opus 4.8. I'm going to show you how to connect OpenRouter to Cursor to code with GLM 5.2 shortly. But before that, I want to talk about how to use it in terms of just testing it out and seeing what you think. So we're here on Instapilot.ai. This is a tool that I built, which basically is like Hermes or OpenClaw, but it's all in the cloud. It's really easy to use, and it allows me to use any model I want from OpenRouter. It's all built in so that you can create an account and try it out for free. Just go to Instapilot.ai if you're interested. And here we have GLM 5.2. So there's so much that I could do with this. So we'll send off a prompt, email me a summary of the latest AI news today. And I can just tell you from my experience using this as an agent, I am finding GLM 5.2 to be on par with Opus, maybe a little bit under, maybe a little bit under. And when I'm talking about using it as an agent, that isn't just like, doing a little bit of research and getting an output. Like even for this, I probably don't have to necessarily use GLM 5.2, although it's cheap enough that I don't mind doing it. That also means being able to do a bunch of tool calls, being able to keep track of where it is in a long process, tracking its progress here, and just generally being able to complete long tasks. So this is where the more powerful models start to really show how good they are, is when you have long tasks, when you have to do a lot of tool calls, a lot of research, it's able to keep all of that straight and basically complete the task the way that you want. So here it emailed me a summary of today's top AI news. And also, by the way, this email feature, like it can, if you have an account on Instapilot, you can ask it to email you and it'll just email you without having to do any setup. So you can have your agent email you on your own. It's a pretty cool feature. For example, you could also say like every morning, email me if Fable 5 is available or not. And it can set up an automation. I'll just show you that really quick. But yeah, this is using GLM 5.2. So if you want to just test it out, chat with it, go to instapilot.ai and check it out. I'll just show you what this looks like real quick. Now I have an automation every morning that's going to search for the latest news, determine if it's available, and then email me an update telling me if it's available or not. And what's cool is we can just see the automation, we can click into it and there's a prompt. And when the trigger is going to happen is the next one is happening in 17 hours. Then you can also choose the model. So I'm using Minimax as my default model right now. It's even cheaper than GLM, I think, actually. I'd have to double check, but I could switch this to GLM actually. So maybe I'll do that. So this will be the model that it'll email me with. So yeah, that's just a little preview of something I've been building. I'm going to talk more about that later. So subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more updates on this tool. So that's one way to test out GLM in terms of testing it out as an agent. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you how you can set it up in Cursor so that we can code with it. So to do this, we're going to go to the settings of our Cursor app, and then we can go to models. And then here we can click view all models, and GLM 5.2 is an option here. So I can go ahead, turn that on, and then you'll be able to start coding in Cursor using GLM 5.2. So it's as simple as that. You just have to go into your models and then turn that on. And then you're going to have access to a much less expensive model at Opus level quality. So this is kind of a game changer. I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on this and how it might affect things. But I think this is a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to allow agentic tools like Instapilot that I showed you to run at a much higher quality for a lot less money. So instead of having to pay maybe $100 a day to have a personal agent that's doing a lot of really good work for you, maybe you only have to pay $5 a day to do that. So that just opens up this, it makes this so much more accessible to so many more people to have some sort of a personal agent that's going to help them with work. So that's one, I think, huge thing. I wonder if it's going to push the frontier models to either lower their pricing, or is it going to potentially like pressure the government to allow models like Fable and allow models like GPT 5.6 to be available? Because if they're not available, then people might just not use those. It might really hurt those companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, because people aren't going to be using their models. On the other hand, I think part of the reason that the government doesn't want 5.6 and Fable to be available is because these models can be distilled. So essentially, the Chinese labs can distill those models into something like 5.2. On the other hand, what I'm reading is that now these labs in China are finding their own innovations. And even because GLM 5.2 is so strong, it can start self-improving and using that to build new models in the future. So there's a lot of things in play here, and it's hard to predict exactly what the future is going to bring. But overall, I think in terms of, people using AI, it's bringing more powerful AI at a cheaper price that's making it more accessible. And it is potentially going to push the frontier labs in the US to hopefully make their more powerful models just accessible more quickly, which would also be good for people who are building with AI. But there's a lot of open questions, I think, and it's potentially a game changer. It's only been out for about a week, so people are still, I think, like learning how to use it, learning if it is really as good as some of the Anthropic models or OpenAI models for coding. And there's still an open question of like, are these open source models going to catch up to the frontier labs, or will the frontier labs like OpenAI and Anthropic always be, 6 months ahead, and that won't change? So I don't know the answer to that. Let me know in the comments what you think of how this all plays out. I'd be curious to know how you're thinking about it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more free AI content like this. Things are obviously changing so quickly. Every week it seems like there's something new happening. So yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel and we'll keep you as up to date as we can. Check out instapilot.ai if you want to try out GLM 5.2, and subscribe to our AI newsletter. Go to nocode.mba/newsletter if you want to get our AI builder updates every day for free, sent directly to your inbox. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.